All right, here we are again with another awesome guest. Someone that I've said it before, and if anybody gets offended by this, you just got to kind of deal with it because I'm not going to take it back. One of our favorites that we've had on this podcast and all the podcasts that Deb and I have done together. She is a mental performance coach, an advisor, a speaker, and founder of Elite by Choice. Our friend, Lauren Johnson. What's going on, Lauren?
Hey, it's so good to be back. I missed y'all.
We missed you as well. And I'm going to be honest with you. This is how we normally start the podcast off. I'm a little disappointed this time. I do have to apologize because Deb is here. And I know the last few times you and I have recorded, it's been just you and I. And like, I think the best way I can put this is it's like when like a big brother has to drag the little sister along when he's going to go hang out with friends. Like, I don't really want her here, but mom and dad said I got to bring her. And so that's what this feels like to me. So, and I like Deb a lot. I'm just saying, we even joked before, it's unfair that I have to share questions this time. So there we go.
This is exactly how I remember it.
Oh, good. And she still said yes.
Yeah. Not much has changed, Lauren. Not much has changed.
It's like, this is amazing. This is why I said yes.
Oh, thank you.
Precisely.
We're so glad because I was telling Lauren before we started recording, she really makes us step our game up because she does so many podcasts with other people. And so I usually listen to a few right before we record with her to kind of make sure that we're not doing the same thing. And we are clearly not doing the same thing. We are doing something very different than all of her other podcasts that she's been on. They're much, much smarter than at least me. I'm not gonna say they're smarter than you, Deb, but definitely smarter than me. And so it's always fun. It's like she's going to some kind of college or university with those other podcasts. And this is like a wacky bounce house. So we're glad she's
and yet one of my favorite places.
And we appreciate that. We appreciate that. I don't want to just keep talking because I know everybody wants to hear Lauren, but I do want to say one thing and get this out of the way. So it's been about a year and a half since we last spoke to you. Funny enough, I actually saw you and your husband at the David Goggins run that was in Sacramento because my former boss was kind of spearheading the two locations where that happened. So I just happened to bump into you. I'm like, hey, this is weird. But as far as podcasting, it's been about a year and a half, I think. And I have to say my respect went way up and I have the utmost respect for you, but my respect for you went even higher because during our Guest of the Year tournament, you were just crushing it all the way through. And you found yourself in a pretty tight race right before you ended up being eliminated. And you posted a video and tagged us, which is not uncommon. A lot of people really get into it and they post these videos saying, hey, vote for me, please. Here's this thing that I'm doing. So Lauren did that, which wasn't a surprise. The part that was surprising is she's like, hey, vote for me. I'm in this race. It's tight. And then the camera pans down to her newborn baby. And she's like, if you don't vote for me, you're not voting for this. I'm like, oh, what a gangster move. I was very impressed. I'm like, I didn't realize how competitive she was. I knew she was, but I didn't realize the extent that she was willing to go. So my respect for you is even higher.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, now you know where I'm not against using my resources.
Yeah. Almost worked too. It almost worked.
Almost, but did not. And you know what? I forget her name, but the woman that beat me out was amazing. And we went on to vote for her in the finals and all of that. So it's really the race you put on at the end of the year is so much fun. I watch it every year. I look forward to it.
Well, awesome. I'm glad you enjoy it. And yeah, you were very close. Kaylee, I think, was the one that you lost to. But anyways, that's not why we had you on to talk about all this nonsense. Normally when we have someone on, we just kind of chat and talk about random things. But this time we wanted you to come on because it's your second time. And we had something pretty specific that we wanted to talk to you about because I feel like you've been posting a decent amount about this. Obviously, you talk about mental performance and how that affects athletes, professionals, CEOs, all that stuff. But I think the thing that I was most interested in, and it seems like in this season of your life, you've been sharing quite a bit about, is maintaining connections and keeping connections along the way and along your journey towards pursuing the dream or the thing that you're trying to accomplish. And I think it's always a fascinating thing that we don't talk about it a ton. And usually when we talk about it, it's like, hey, you got to get rid of people that are negative influences in your life. But it's really not that simple all the time. There's probably a lot of great people in your life that you would love to stay connected with. But it's not always that easy as you're pursuing greatness. And so because of all the great things you're doing, I'm sure you've had to make some difficult choices. So we wanted to talk to you about that. How do you maintain connections and also achieve great things and stay ambitious and stay driven? And then how do you choose who stays and who goes? Because, I mean, at some point, as much as you may want to keep everybody, you just can't do it. And not always for a bad reason, but sometimes people just aren't ready to go on that journey with you. So kind of a big question to start off with, but how do you find the balance, or how do you manage relationships that are really important to you, but also, stay driven, stay ambitious, and go after that greatness?
Yeah, it's such a good question. Um, I'll start with this. It all changed for me when I had my son. I, of course, I think I was aware to some degree of the value of connections, and I also knew that I have a pattern of like pursuing to the degree where I can cut everything out in order to achieve it. And I know this about myself. And I have a pretty good idea why I have a pattern like this. And I think it's connected to the fact that I used to, when I would be pursuing, let's just say soccer, for example, played all the way through college and sports was really important to me. When I would be pursuing, getting fit or in developing skills or winning a game for that matter, I realized that I wasn't just out there fighting to win, to get fit, or to have a good outcome. I was fighting to maintain a sense of worth. And when you identify really closely with your outcomes, it's really easy to sacrifice all other things, because if you're not worthy, what does connection matter anyway? And so when I started to learn this pattern for myself, I became a little bit more aware of it. It doesn't mean I still don't fall into it from time to time, but then the second I had my son in front of me, it was as if all of those lessons just clicked. They all came together. And I just realized, oh my gosh, like this is the point of life. You can have all those, you can't take your achievements with you. You can't take your, new purse or your nice car or your home. Really, we're all just borrowing these things. At some point, someone else is going to own the home that I own. At some point, somebody else is going to own the car that I own, or the clothes that I'm wearing, or the computer that I have. And so I started to realize, well, what do we really have then? And it got me thinking about, when I saw the beginning of life, it got me thinking about the end of life and how I wanted to live with the life that I have. And when I realized this, I started to think about what connections really matter to me. And it doesn't mean pursuit's not important, because it gives me a really good sense of purpose and value. However, it's not everything. But if I'm not careful, I could miss out on all of it. And so I really, truly believe that's where it really all began for me.
Wow.
It's funny because one of my questions I had down for you was like when when did it click? And you literally just answered that. Like, when did it click for you? About just like, well, my original question was, what is something you did early on in pursuing your career that allowed you to, make connections with someone, or what was that meaning to you? What did that mean to you? But I like that. I didn't expect that story about your son. So that was really eye-opening for me. Exactly. But so when you talked about worthiness, sorry, I was typing notes as you were talking. It made me think of something called imposter syndrome. Like, who do I think I am trying to do this new thing, or trying to start this thing, or, with anything, career related or relationships or whatever. Can you speak to that? Like, have you ever experienced imposter syndrome, or have you worked with people who have experienced it as well?
I have both experienced it and worked with people that are experiencing it. And it's a really common thing. I think I went through the very common trend of, I went to school, got my master's degree, got out of my master's degree, thought I was like it was the classic Dunning-Kruger effect, where I was like, I'm amazing, I know everything, I'm out to cure the world. I have all the information I need to go now and do this, pursue this career. And then as you start to pursue it, you start to realize, oh my gosh, I know nothing. And so then they call it the valley of despair. So first you peak really high, like I'm overly confident. And then you hit this valley of despair where you go, oh my gosh, I know absolutely nothing. It's almost like you lose all confidence. You second guess if you could do it at all. Doubt creeps in, halting you from taking any action at all. And then as you start to work through that valley of despair, as you start to have the experiences, put in the reps, experience the failures, the highs, the things that work, the things that don't, you start to develop competence. And as you develop competence in the area of expertise or a skill or whatever it is that you do, you begin to develop confidence. But the big mistake that all of us can fall into is the trap of believing we are an expert. Mm. When you believe you are an expert, you stunt your ability to grow. And so I think the sweet spot is having confidence, but understanding that as you learn new things, you're willing to adjust your beliefs. You're willing to adjust your stance. And so I believe the saying is hold your beliefs, but loosely. And so, you can hold your beliefs, but with a loose fist, because then as you start to learn new things, you can begin to evolve your beliefs and ideas based on new information. And boy, is that not a perfect example of, my career. There's so many beliefs I have shifted, upgraded, changed, and evolved just, I think as a result of learning, experiencing, and challenging some of my own beliefs.
No, as far as like your evolving and changing beliefs and different things like that. I mean, obviously, one of the biggest factors in that is having a child, and because it completely changes your world. So, were there any things that you thought going into having a kid is like, okay, I'm gonna be this way when it comes to my career, and then the baby comes, is like, that was a bad idea. I'm not thinking the same way anymore. So, and if so, like, what was maybe like the one big thing that really, as you said, you had to kind of loosen up the grip on the belief a little bit when it came to now being a mom and also pursuing the career?
Yeah. It's funny. I've always had big goals. I don't think that'll ever change. But there is such thing to me as enough. I think I describe it as like the law of diminishing returns. You can pursue and then it starts to diminish. And for me, I don't want my pursuit to overshadow my relationship with my husband and my child. If that starts, it doesn't mean that there aren't seasons or moments where, hey, this is the goal we're after. We know, like, hey, I've got to travel or we've got to do this. And we've just discussed it as a family, or me and my husband have just discussed it and said, you know what? Yes, like, I want you to go do this. But I am no longer willing to sell my time or my efforts if it's going to impact my relationships with the people I care about the most. And so I think that that's something big that has changed. I think I thought I would maintain the same schedule. Oh, it's not that hard. Like, oh, I could figure this out. I mean, nothing is as hard until you're in it, right? Until you're in it yourself. And the best example of this is everybody told me, Lauren, your life is going to change. And I knew it in my head, but I didn't understand it in my heart until he was in front of me. And that's when I was like, oh, I get it. It's the same way as if a parent or a coach gives you advice on something. Sometimes you hear it up here in your head, but it's not until you go through it yourself that you really understand it in your heart. And so I started to really connect to that. So for me, it's definitely not allowing my career or my pursuits to overshadow the relationships that matter most. And then I would also say a little bit more practical from a parent perspective. I didn't know how worried I would be.
Yeah.
I am not kidding you. The amount of irrational worries that pop in my head on a daily basis is something I was not prepared for, and I also did not expect. So that is also something that has shifted my life entirely, and I found myself apologizing to my mom quite a bit. Quite a bit.
Yeah, she's been waiting for this moment, right? It's like this will come back to me at some point. I just gotta
Yeah,
just
you
wait a
do.
little bit. No, you're not lying. It's one of the worst things. And it's also, it makes this whole interaction with people, like the whole interaction with people, different too. When they're like, "What are you worried about?" Like, you have no idea. I've been staying up all night worrying. It's like, but you're right though. Like everything changes, and it is not a fun place to be. It's an awesome place to be as a parent, but like the constant worry is tough. And even for the most laid back people, like I'm a pretty laid back guy. There's times like, hey, I'll tell you what, when we go to a playground, my anxiety goes through the roof because the balls on these kids. It's like, you guys are killing me right now. And it's like, I would have been terrified when I was little. I hate heights. And they're like, climb up, like, look at me, Dad. I'm like, no, no, no. They're going to fall. So it's like, it's the worst.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought I was a chill parent. Like I am not chill. I have no chill.
It's tough.
I am just a worrier. So I'm gonna have to really work on my stuff. My kid's young enough right now as he doesn't really notice it. Or he doesn't, maybe he just doesn't know. It's really, I keep it up here and I share only a little bit with my husband, but he knows that I get it. I should just say, I get it.
It's tough. There's so many things I want to say about my wife because she's a natural warrior. I'm going to leave those stories off. We can talk about that another time off air, but I can't put her on blast right now. But something that
I have no.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Deb.
I haven't. I was gonna say I'm like I don't have kids, but I when I see my nephew and I watch and I'm just around him, his mom's around, like my sister's there. I'm just like watching him and I'm like, oh my God, this is so stressful. I'm like, how do you do that? So that's all I can speak to. But I can't imagine just all I feel for you guys and thank you for procreating because I'm not going to do it. But
And no kid can have too much love. So Auntie Deb is a important piece to the puzzle.
100%. I did want to ask you though, speaking about, how your relationship with your dreams kind of shifted a little bit or were adjusted when you had your child. I feel like, I don't know how to word this the best, but I feel like what happens is you're pursuing something and you also have this connection with your child and you value that more than anything. It's almost like it's like this tug of war between which one are you going to regret most? Are you going to have more regret not pursuing the thing that you're so passionate about and potentially missing out on something amazing because you're focused more on your family? Or are you going to regret the connection that you missed out on with your kids or your husband or your wife because you were so busy pursuing this other thing? And for me, it's always become, since having kids, it really has become this tug of war between what am I going to regret most? And I can tell you, I can't speak for everybody, but I know in the moments where I've missed out on opportunities with my kids, I will be sitting up late at night and there is no regret worse than that feeling. When you're sitting there thinking, man, I missed an opportunity. And we spend a lot of time with our kids. Even the smallest thing, it's like you start beating yourself up because like, I could have done better there. I love podcasting. There isn't one time where I thought, oh, I'm a failure because I missed out on some podcasting opportunity. But with my kids, it's a different regret that you feel. And so everything you said is 100% true. And it is a different battle you fight when you have that connection with your family and you're trying to pursue something great. Like, it's not as easy as they say.
You're so right. And I have a perfect example of this. So this past year, I worked with the U.S. Women's National Team, and my role was to support the head coach and their staff. And I went to the World Cup, and I was gone for 44 days straight.
Whoa!
Mind you, I had a 9-month-old when I left. I remember sitting down with my husband when this opportunity approached itself. And this opportunity started much before the World Cup. And so there was a lot of travel still even leading up to it, but shorter stints. And I remember asking, like, we just sat down and it was a decision between he and I because he was going to have to be the sole provider when I was gone. And it's not just me it impacts. And we had this conversation, and ultimately I'm like, man, a World Cup only comes around every 4 years. This is a team that I have admired, watched. I remember the 99 World Cup, and I actually got to work alongside some of the 99ers in this. And so I was like, when I first met them, I was like, I gotta keep my cool. But I'm like, your poster was on my wall. But I was like, right, make sure they know you're not crazy first, and then you can
Yeah.
share that. But it was one of those experiences where, to your point, I had to make the decision. And I was like, you know what? And my husband and I both decided, like, no, you need to go. And so I took that role. However, there are also times on the flip side where there's a really great opportunity I've had, and it was going to require me to move. Actually, one opportunity was for us to move, and I was like, no, we're not uprooting our family. Like, we're like, there are just some things that are we're not willing to do. And so when you're saying this, I'm like, yes, it is a tug of war. And it's super easy to say that, no, I'm not going to sacrifice that when the opportunities doesn't match it. But if an opportunity matches those moments, or is even, for a moment greater than that, it makes that a harder discussion. So it's not so black and white. It is a case by case basis. I don't find many cases now come along like that, at least, that I'm willing to make those sacrifices for, but it's not to say that there will never be an opportunity like that again. So to your point, I totally agree.
Wow. That, and just circling back around to you saying that, just trying to find that balance of just, not making too many sacrifices of like career and doing all these things and working hard, and then you're going to miss out on all these things with your loved ones or with people you care about. Like, I was just thinking about that, just going back around to it. That must have been really hard you're a very like career motivated person. You're very driven, like, in my definition, like boss bitch, like that's what I call women who just are like go-getters. Yeah, that's just, that's just who you are. And that is such a hard like thing to accept, I think. And I feel like a lot of women who are very strong, very independent, very much like, I'm going to do this myself and I deserve this and I work hard for it, I worked hard for it. It's very hard to admit that to themselves. Like, I need to maybe step back away from this because it's taking time away from people I love, whether it be family or friends, and I don't know, your pet, whoever, whatever, means a lot to you. It just, so do you come across people who struggle with that? And then how do you, I don't know if we're giving away too many of your secrets or whatever, but like how do you talk them through that? Because that could be a hard thing to like step away from career to be like, okay, I need to focus on relationships, because some women are just like such go-getters and they're like, go, go, go. So do you come across people who struggle with that?
Yeah, actually, believe it or not, a lot of my CEOs struggle with this.
Hmm.
I'm trying to think through. I'm literally going through, and almost all of them, I've had a conversation with them about this at some point. And what a lot of people struggle with that are really high achievers is they fail to realize what fulfills them early enough before the success, meaning they have this massive success and then they get there and they go, is that it?
Mm-hmm.
They're like, why am I feeling empty? And it's like, I thought this was the thing that was going to fulfill me. And then come to find out, their marriage is crumbling. Their kids want nothing to do with them. Their kids feel second to their work. Oh, dad or mom is always working. And they miss out on all these massive moments. And then they somehow think that after the success, they can just fit right back into this ecosystem that is used to not having them.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're shocked. And so it's a very common thing that I see in high achievers and high performers. And maybe that's why I'm so reflective on it myself, because I do know that that's a trap I can fall into if I'm not careful. And I see it quite often. And so I think that one of the really important takeaways is sometimes we don't have the time, but what do we do with the time that we have? Because a lot of times my CEOs won't have a 2-week vacation every other month to take with their family, but they have dinner every night. And when they're sitting at dinner, their bodies are there, but their minds are somewhere entirely different. And so while there is plenty of opportunity for connection and relationships and building those moments of incredibly deep conversation and learning about the person on the other end of the table, they are so in their head about their next move, their market strategy, who they have to hire, who they need to fire, that they're not even able to take those opportunities. And then they blame it on, I have no time. And I call BS. Is we have to make the time. And so a lot of moments that end up falling in my lap is, how do we make sure that you can be present? How do we develop your focus in a way that you can put your attention where you want it, when you want it? Because yes, your attention is important when you're at work. Thinking about your family when you're at work is not going to make you work any better. I mean, unless you're trying to dig deep for some motivation and to find your why, sure, that might be a good reason for it. But worrying about what happened last night is not going to make you a better CEO in the moment. The same as worrying about what you're going to do tomorrow is not going to make you a better dad at dinner.
Yeah, that's really good.
That's a good. Well, yeah, it's a good way to think of it too. Like you said, like you may not have the, let's say you don't have the time, but you have something in the day in that, and it depends on what you do with that something. And it's hard to, to turn off your brain. But yeah, I don't, I don't have kids or, all that. So I can't imagine like just how like crazy that is in someone's head to like try to balance all that and try to make space for that. So I'm sure it's something that it's hard to ask for help with.
Yeah. Well, and I will say that it's a problem that doesn't always present itself so
Mhm.
directly.
Mhm.
And so not a lot of times people come to me and they say, oh, this is my problem, but the problem's rarely the problem. It's often our relationship with the problem. And so their relationship with feeling like they always have to be on, or with their relationship with always existing in a future state and not being able to be right where they're at. And so that's one of the things that we work on. And there's a question that I actually really like that has not only helped me, but also helps my clients when they're with their family. And let's say they're exhausted. They are like, they don't have a whole lot left in the tank. And I don't know if you've ever been there, whether it's with a friend or a kid or a family member, when you like really want to be there for them, but in the moment you're just like, oh God, I struggle. And so there's this perspective that I want to challenge you and everybody else to take, which is, pretend that you are 80 years old and you have a second chance at this very moment. How would you treat it? When
That's a good
I'm
way to look.
exhausted and my kiddo wants me to read another book, or he wants me to sing the ABCs with him one more time, I'll ask myself that question, because I think what it pulls into our frame is how these little moments are what actually make a fulfilling life.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
100%.
great.
No, I love that. I think that's a great way of looking at it, especially because our last episode we were talking about getting older. So it's a nice little tie-in
Yeah.
to the previous episode. Well, I feel like I think what makes the relationship, with people versus the relationship with your passions so difficult is I imagine there's always a way you can, there's a new strategy you can implement for yourself. There's a new way to develop, your own mindset and, things that can help you achieve what you're trying to achieve. But I feel like, man, a broken connection is really difficult to repair. And we see it all the time, right? People have these broken relationships with, a significant other, a parent, a brother, a sister. When you involve someone else, it's really hard to repair those things. So if you're not giving the time to, nurture those things and make those the best they can possibly be, it's really difficult to go back and fix those things. It's not impossible, but it's not as easy as developing a new strategy for whatever your work is or whatever your dream is. Like those things you can figure out because you have that drive. But I don't
Right.
think, I really don't think, and you're the pro, so let me know. I don't think there's any amount of drive that's going to help you fix a broken relationship. I think once you break that, you can be as driven as you want. You can be David Goggins. It's not going to matter because there's another person on
Well,
the end of
because
it.
yeah, I was just gonna say because it's not just you that's
Right.
involved. Like it's not just your say is not the only one that
Right.
matters. And what we know is that trust is made up of two things, honesty and consistency. If you're not honest and you're not consistent, like there's no trust. And what's a relationship without it?
Right.
And so, yeah, I totally agree. It's not as easy to mend a broken relationship as it is to maintain an already good one. And so one of the things that I actually heard this, I love Jesse Itzler and Sarah Blakely. They're like my like family like models. Like my husband loves Jesse Itzler. I swear to God, he is Jesse Itzler and I am more Sarah Blakely.
That's
Although I
awesome.
do like that. Yeah, I just, we love them so much and we really look up to them. And Jesse said something on a podcast I was listening to. He was saying that he writes letters to people often.
Hmm.
I think it's once a year he does it. And he picks a handful of people and he handwrites them letters. And if you just think of connections as like touch points, and again, keeping that honesty and consistency in the frame of mind, but when when you're creating touch points as much as you can with the people that you love, what you're doing is every time you're depositing, you're investing in that relationship.
Hmm.
And so who is one person that you can think of, one person a day that you can just text to check in with? Hey, thinking about you. How are you doing? That's a form of connection. Somebody that you can write just a letter to and just say like, hey, I just wanted to thank you for all your mentorship or your example that you've been given. Or one time you said this thing to me and it stuck with me and it really got me through a tough time. And I just want to say thanks. Like those little pieces of connection are really valuable. And I was inspired by Jesse Itzler to do something similar. And so what I've been doing is when I find either a friend or somebody, it doesn't, whether they're going through a tough time or they're celebrating something exciting, or it's just because, is really doing something to invest in that relationship and just show up and just tell them how much I love them and how much I value them.
Yeah. I think that's amazing. And it kind of ties into a question I had for you because this sounds weird. I'm sure some people hear this and are like, that seems creepy. It's not meant to be. But if I know someone that I would like to have on the show or someone that we hope to have, like yourself, to have back on the show, I'll see stories or I'll see posts and I'll make a little note, like a running list of notes. Like if she comes back on the podcast, if we don't scare her off this time, maybe we can ask her this question. And, one of the things I noticed, especially over the last maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 months is the connection with your husband. And so, there was one, I think it was a story that you posted where you guys were basically sitting down and planning out what the future was going to look like. And I think I just thought that was a really cool thing because, a lot of people want to be on the same page as the people that they're close with or their significant other or their spouse. But I don't know if that many people sit down in the same way you guys did to basically lay it all out. And I imagine that doing that, taking the time to do that, communicating in that way, probably prevents a lot of areas where connection could be lost because you guys are always on the same page. You guys know which direction you're going. And so even if there's a slight deviation here or there, you guys are on the same page. And so those little bumps in the road you guys can handle because the main overarching goals and dreams are understood by both sides. And so how important has that, I mean, I'm sure it's been something you guys have done throughout the course of your relationship, but especially now because you have another person in your family, the elite by choice has gotten bigger and better every year. Like how important is it to really stay, I guess, be intentional about connecting with your significant other or your family or whoever, is closest with you about what you're trying to achieve? Like how important is that to communicate in that way?
Oh my gosh. It is so important. And it's like a cheat code. Like you're offering like this cheat sheet to your partner on not only the things that you value, things that you care about, but also how they can support you and vice versa. Can you imagine if you just had a sheet on, okay, my wife is feeling this way. This is how she likes to be supported in those moments. Like even just with anybody, not even your spouse, but like your friends, like your colleagues, like how much easier, how many times have you, with the best of intentions, attempted to support somebody only for them to be like totally reject
Sure.
it, and realizing that that's actually not how they like to be supported,
Sure.
and you're like, ah, crap, like I messed that up. Like, yeah, I mean anyone who's been in, had any sort of relationship or friendship or otherwise, can probably relate to it. And so for us, it's not just about achievements, because achievements are important, but what we know is that what's an achievement when we're not okay?
Sure.
Like, if we're not okay, these achievements don't carry a lot of weight for either of us. And so when we know that we're on the same page and we're connected and we know how to support each other, and hey, we can cheer each other on, we can also be that accountability partner when we're not feeling, we can remind each other why it was so important to us in the first place, and then be the person to celebrate. Like, my husband and I, we not only do these check-ins with achievements, but we never fail to celebrate
Yeah.
a win, big or small. Like, we celebrate every win, and I cannot express that enough. Like, I'll do something, I don't know, I'll land a new contract. It's not even a big one, but I'll land a contract, or I'll land a new client, or whatever it is. We celebrate every single time. Same with my husband. And I think that those little moments of connection, it's like, if you miss that along the way, like, you're missing the best part of the journey, in my opinion. So I think it's really important for a lot of reasons, but mainly because, I don't think any achievement is achieved alone.
Yeah.
And if you're not on the same team, and as a team you're not on the same page, it makes it really hard to do that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. No, I just thought it was a cool thing that you guys did. And I think a lot of people would benefit from that. And like, it just, like I said, I met your husband at the run. We didn't have a chance to talk too much because my former boss was there, and he is like a pit bull when he has an idea. So we started chatting. But one of the things I always appreciate about you guys, from what I've seen from social media, is you guys seem to like have fun too, where it could just
So
be
much.
this high achieving all the time. Like, we're just constantly trying to achieve something, da 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 da. It's like, that's great. But at a certain point, and like kind of like we talked about in this episode last week, as far as getting older, like one of the ways you kind of stay young at heart is to have fun. And not just have fun, but like do something silly. And I think you guys were like at an arcade, or you guys were doing something like just silly and fun. Has nothing to do with your goals. It's like, I love that. You know what I mean? Do you know how many times I've shot my wife with a Nerf gun in this house? More than she wants, but it's fun. So we enjoy it.
So fun. And by the way, I did have a goal that day, and that was to beat him. But the problem is,
Sure.
he is really, really good at bowling. Actually, fun fact, when my husband was in like junior high and high school, he had his own bowling ball and bowling shoes.
What?
And shout out to any like, I don't know, like dedicated bowlers, but this made me laugh so hard. I was like, no, you didn't. And he like took it so seriously. So he's actually really good.
Oh man.
And so the joke was, I was like, I have a positivity bias. I don't focus on any of my losses, and I only hyper focus on my one win, because I only truly beat him once. All the other, I think we played like 6 games and he beat me 5 times, but
Oof.
I don't remember that one. And I don't post about those. I only post about the one that I won, that I win.
Oh, that's awesome. That's very cool.
Yeah.
I wish I was that good at bowling. My dad used to do a lot of bowling, and he'll do this thing sometimes if we ever bowl. It's been a long time, but he's like, "Oh, it's been a while." It's like, "All right, old man, we know you're sandbagging a little bit." And then sure enough, his score, he's
Right?
just smoking us. Like, can't believe I bowled that well. It's like, you knew you were going to. Don't do that.
Get out of
So
here.
what? But
Get
that's
out of
awesome. Well,
here.
congratulations on your one win. That's awesome.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely.
Thank you.
But the point being,
Yeah.
like, I just love that you guys seem to actually have fun. You know what I mean? It's not just two people losing their minds trying to achieve. It's like you guys actually enjoy each other's company, or you guys are really good at faking it, and you got me fooled.
Yeah. No, I'm not kidding you. We are like legitimately best friends. There's
Yeah.
not a day that goes by that we don't laugh. Like, with our son, also, we always think like, how fun is it to be able to see your parents enjoying each
Yeah.
other? And so I'm not kidding you, our neighbors are probably going to have to, or they're probably going to like have to check in on us to see if we're okay. But like my son is constantly on my husband's shoulders, sprinting down the hallway, screaming, laughing with our dog jumping up and down. I mean, we make a ruckus like every night. It is so loud, but we try to do things that are fun. And we just have a ball together. So I'm very lucky, and I feel really blessed to have married my best friend because we genuinely enjoy each other's company.
I love that.
I love
I don't want to, this is
Yeah.
not about me, but that did remind me of a fun story. I don't know if my wife's going to appreciate this, but I'm going to share it. So we were doing something similar with our two girls. We were running throughout the house, and I was acting like a monster and chasing them. We were having a good time. And so they were in one of the bedrooms, and I chased them down the hall, and they're like, going crazy. And when I was leaving, Rachel was with them, and just for fun, I just kind of smacked her on the butt. Didn't even think about it. I get halfway down the hallway and I hear, "Why did Daddy hit you?" Like, whoa, hold on, time out in the game. Time out in the game. That is not what happened.
Like, oh God, I didn't think I was gonna have to explain this.
It's like a love pat. We're having fun. Daddy does not hit any of you guys. Would never hit you guys.
Yeah.
Let's just make that very
Please
clear.
don't repeat this in public.
I know. I was like, oh no. I was like, oh. So just you guys, you have a young one still. Just be aware when he starts talking.
Okay,
It's a
fair.
problem.
Good to know. Thank you.
A little warning.
Noted.
Yeah.
Noted.
I love that you guys celebrate your wins together
Yeah.
too. Like I know you guys have healthy competition, like when speaking of like bowling and games and stuff. And I love that you're like, I'm going to beat you, like you're going down, and it's all in good fun. But it could easily be a scenario when you have like two high achieving like people like in a relationship, like they could easily like tear each other down. Like one can like genuinely be like, oh my God, he's doing better than me, like I hate this, and or vice versa, or like jealousy. Like I've seen that in relationships. I've kind of been in one before. It's weird. Like I'm not trying, like we should be like uplifting each other. Like why are we getting upset at each other's achievements? So I can see that easily happening as well. And so I mean, I'm not sure if you run across people who deal with that as well, like maybe with their spouses or significant others, or if it's even recognized. But sometimes that can be like super like toxic and not good. So that's it's really important to like, I'm glad you said that, to like be able to like support each other and celebrate each other's wins when it comes to like career and just things in life in general.
That's so true. And I think, I've not been in a relationship with like a boyfriend or anything like that that's treated me that way. However, I have been in a friendship like that. And it's really hard to be in because you feel like you have to shrink yourself in the moment. And anybody that makes you feel that you have to be somebody that you're not, like you're not free in that relationship. You're not safe in that relationship. And I'm not trying to say this is a blanket response for everybody, but I know for myself, those relationships, the first question I ask is why? And sometimes it has to do with the other person and that you have no control over. And it doesn't mean that you should change you in those moments. Maybe it means, if nothing else, you should create different proximity and you should change your proximity. Maybe not, throw the person completely out, but like, hey, we're just creating a little bit of distance. But sometimes I have been the person that has felt jealous. And it was funny because I used to not recognize it in that way. I would feel a certain way in a relationship, and I would go, oh, well, I just don't like the way they did this or whatever. And I'm like, no. You don't have those feelings because of them. That feeling might actually be happening because of you. And so I don't put a whole lot of effort into when others are jealous of me because I have no control over that. That's an inside job, and that's them that they're struggling with, not me. It really, most of the time, has nothing to do with me. But vice versa, if I ever feel that towards someone else, it is my responsibility to dive in and investigate a little bit more. What is it about me that I don't like or that is being reflected to me in this moment? And so I think that when you can take responsibility for yourself feeling that way in certain situations, it allows you to have more empathy when it's coming from the other side. And it doesn't mean that you should stay in that relationship or that is a good person to have a relationship with. But it does allow you to have empathy, which can then be even better at creating proximity. It's like, hey, I've been there before. I know what that feeling's like. They must be struggling there. And it allows you to really let go instead of hold on to that like toxic feeling or frustrations as to like, oh, I want this person to change. Well, that's not our job to make them.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, you can't control other people, any relationship. I was just talking with my friends, today about it, and recently, like, you can't, whether you're in a romantic relationship or like a friendship, like when someone else is involved in your life, it's obviously, even as adults, like obviously jealousy can happen, fights can happen, and it's like you can't control the other person, and it's so hard, especially when you're so close to the other person or you don't understand, what they're doing or why they're doing it. But yeah, even I have this talk with my high school kids at work every day. Like, you can't, like, when they get mad at their friends and they're like, pouting about it, and it's just kind of, when I pull them aside, I'm like, what is wrong with you today? If I could just tell they're acting weird in class, and then they start spouting off, he said, she said, blah blah blah, and I'm like, you can't control what they say. So it's funny how as adults we still are kind of learning and still trying to navigate that you can't control another person. Sorry, I didn't mean to get off into that tangent, but
No, it's a great point. It's a
yeah.
great point because really what it's doing, it's your ego trying to protect itself.
Mm,
Because instead of us having to change, if we can point the fingers and point the blame onto somebody else, it gives you the out. You let yourself off the hook. And that's a whole heck of a lot easier to do than to look yourself in the mirror and consider, maybe I don't feel enough. Maybe I don't feel like I am enough currently. And because somebody else, or maybe I'm not doing enough. I said I was going to do this and I
mm,
didn't. And that person went and did it and got great success. And now I'm feeling jealous of that. But I'm not jealous because I'm not capable. I'm jealous because I didn't have the courage to do it myself.
mm,
And so a lot of times it is our own ego that is, that is attached in those moments, and that's revealing something. And I've to tell, like, my husband literally has, like, he has a lot of ambition, but he has like no ego. Like, no, and I'm like, it's something I love about him because I certainly have an ego, and I have to, like, and he'll check me every once in a while, like, hey, and I'm like, yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, thanks. But he was a professional golfer for 9 years,
Wow.
and when he would go out and play with people, there were some guys that really struggled playing with him because he was just better. But these people maybe weren't pros anyway, so they shouldn't be. But their ego got the best of him, and I'm like, man, I'm really glad you were with my husband because he could care less if he loses in something that doesn't matter. Like,
mhm.
he just wants to have fun. So
Yeah.
I just think that the bigger topic here is around just our ego and some of our defense mechanisms that um, kind of show itself in moments where it's being challenged.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing to think about though too, because I'm sure all three of us have heard this throughout our lives, especially being connected to the athletic world. There's this concept you hear all the time about you don't want to be the best in your group, right? The sharpest knife in the drawer. As far as you want, like find another drawer if you're the sharp, like all those different analogies, right? But then for some people, like that's a really difficult thing. Like they'll find five people that should strengthen them and challenge them to be better, but instead of taking the opportunity to learn, like you said, the ego gets in the way and it becomes this constant comparison. And it's actually doing the exact opposite of what it's
Yeah.
supposed to do. Rather than build you up, you're in your head the whole time. And it's not tearing you down. You're kind of tearing yourself down. But it's a very
Correct.
bizarre thing because I think everybody they like the idea of that, but then the actual practical application of being around people that are better than you is not always easy if you have that ego that's there. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's you end up falling into the trap of competing versus collaborating.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And there's time and place for competition. So I'm not against that. I like to compete myself. Hello. I'll compete 6 times just to win once. Um, but I do find, and I have seen myself and experienced it myself, where somebody is so clearly competing and when you're not, and you're like, oh, and I can recognize it again because I first recognized it in myself. And so I can have empathy for them in that moment and go, I know exactly how you're feeling right now. And for that, I can extend some empathy. I'm not going to change it for you. I'm not going to change who I am. but I can say like, I get it. And so, yeah, I agree with you. I think that for some people, being the best is a title that carries a lot of weight with them.
Yeah.
And, you see that a lot. I mean, if you know anybody that is diagnosed with narcissism or narcissistic, or has narcissistic tendencies, this is a perfect example of really struggling to let your ego, take a back seat, is always having to feel superior in any group that you're in. And so a lot of times those kind of people, you'll end up seeing them surrounding themselves with people people who are less than, whether it's from a skill perspective, a title perspective, an achievement perspective, not because they can't exist in greater groups, but because the pain in which they experience another group better than them is not worth it's not worth that to them. They would rather feel their need to feel superior overshadows their need to grow. And so in those moments, they'll surround themselves with people that make them feel, where they are kind of the top dog in those instances. And so anyway, I kind of went off on a tangent there, but I have recognized that and seen it before.
Yeah, that's really good.
You just hit on my favorite psychology topic, narcissism. It's great. I can talk about this for hours.
And I feel a little bit challenged. I feel like I have to question myself. Maybe that's why I always make fun of Deb on this podcast. Maybe there's a little ego thing there, and it's a competitive thing. Doesn't mean it's going to stop. I'm just saying maybe that's why. Try to tear her down.
I think that's love. I think that's like sibling love.
That's a very generous way to put it.
You won't admit it.
We can move on.
Of course you won't admit
No,
it.
absolutely not. Absolutely not. I did want to ask you though, completely off topic of this, but we've done this a lot, and especially since we've last recorded with you. One of our more popular episodes that we do on this podcast is pet peeves. I don't need a whole list of your pet peeves, but is there one burning pet peeve? If you're not watching the video of this and just listening, she is nodding her head in a very animated way. So she's got one at the top. Yes. So if you had to pick one, what's the one thing that just drives you absolutely nuts where you're ready to fight if this happens?
Chewing with your mouth open.
There we go. That was one of mine.
That literally, I'm having a hard time speaking.
Oh man, she is flustered. We've recorded 4 or 5 podcasts. She has never done this once before. This is usually me and Deb tripping over our words. What happened?
You guys.
Who hurt you?
Well, I think it started. I blame my uncle because when I was younger, and when you're young, I was learning manners.
Sure.
And he would get not furious. He would never yell at me, anything like that. It was almost worse, when an adult whispers in your ear. This is an adult that I really highly respect. Yeah. I always really looked up to my uncle. So he's whispering in my ear, and it crushed me from the inside out. He's just stop chewing with your mouth open. And I'm like, okay. And so I'm not kidding you. Since then, I can't stand it myself. And I will go as far as to say that he handed it to me, and I grabbed that baton very quickly. And now I really struggle with it. A little bit's okay, but if it's consistent, whew.
I mean, if food's flying out, there's a problem. I'm not playing dodgeball at dinner. What are we doing here?
Yeah, I really struggle. And I also recognize it's an unhealthy struggle. So for people that are just normal,
is it?
I know I'm not. So a lot of times I just shut my mouth, but man, there are times where I'm I have to do some deep breathing.
I think you should let yourself off the hook with this one because I'm with you.
Same.
Yeah.
Same.
It's not. Yeah. We've done so many of these pet peeves. We'll do 5 and we'll see how it goes. We have so many pet peeves. You don't realize. And they usually get as passionate as yours. So thank you for sharing. I kind of threw a curveball there, but I'm glad I did.
No, that was a good one. Thanks.
Yeah, good. I feel like you got that off your chest, which I'm glad. I'm glad we could help with that.
I feel a little bit better.
Well, hey, I know we only have you for a little bit longer, but one thing I did want to kind of go a few more questions for you, but one thing I wanted to go back to, I feel like a lot of my questions had more of a negative tone as far as not sacrificing family for, achievement and all that stuff. But on the flip side of that, again, going back to your son, there is this really cool dynamic though that he is going to grow up in a household where both mom and dad have a great relationship and are highly ambitious. And so that's where, again, there's this weird balance because there's plenty of people out there that have examples of people that didn't have any ambition. And that's going to have a
Right.
negative effect on them. But he's in a situation where he has two people to look up to that are really, pushing the boundaries for what they believe is possible for their lives. And that's got to be a pretty cool thing. It kind of goes back to the what's your why thing. But, that's where it's like you can't just give up on the ambition because he's counting on it. Like his development, whether he realizes it or not, or he realizes it or not, like he's gaining so much from just watching you guys operate in the manner that you do. And so kind of on the flip side of that, like how much of that and his like what he's witnessing right now, like how much of that it plays in your head while you're striving for these things.
So much. My husband and I want our kids to grow up. And right now we only have one kid, but we would like to have more.
Nice.
So I say that and I was waiting for you to go, kids.
Yeah.
What? Yeah, no, we only have one right now. But even our future kids, we want them to grow up believing that they can pursue anything and that there isn't a limit except for the ones they put on themselves. And I really truly believe that the best way to learn lessons like this is through modeling, by seeing somebody who's done it or believes in that. And I'm like, how could we possibly believe in that and share that with our kids when we're not willing to do it ourselves? And so that's why for us, like, we're like, okay, let's design our life. Like, we get to design our lives. How cool is that? So if we could design the perfect day, what would that look like? That was actually part of my husband and I sit down with each other was, what does your ideal day look like? And we wrote out for both of us what our ideal days look like. And then the question was, okay, how do we achieve it? How do we get that? And we built all that out. We're so blessed and lucky. We have a nanny and she's amazing. And so she helps with this vision that we have for ourselves and for our family in terms of our ability to pursue while also making sure he's cared for. And so for us, we have designed it how we wanted that to be, but it 100% is reflected in also thinking about how he perceives what environment are we creating for him as he grows up? And I think the reason why I'm so passionate about this is because my parents got divorced when I was 10 years old. And while I had an on and off relationship with my dad, like pretty much my whole life. And so he was like sometimes there, sometimes gone for years at a time. And so I really had the steady person in my life growing up with my mom. And I watched her go from not working at all because my dad had his own company to picking up after the divorce and creating a wildly successful career for herself. And watching her do what she did day in and day out, not complaining, just like this is what she knew what was required. And this is what she was willing to do to get there. Just watching her do what she did was so valuable for me because it's partially why I'm willing to put in the same work that I am today. I mean, I saw what she did. And so it was funny because I'm writing a book right now.
Hey.
And part of that was talking about kind of your why behind what you like, why you do what you do. And it was interesting because I remember growing up, especially junior high and high school, I took soccer really seriously and all through college. But specifically, I was thinking about junior high and high school. And I'd practiced 2 days a week. I did extra training 2 days a week. And then I also was a part of this futsal league. And then on weekends, I had tournaments. So I was like soccer every day of the week in some capacity. That stuff's not free. It's actually quite expensive if you're on a good team and you have a good trainer and all of these things. But sometimes, especially growing up, I didn't really think about that. And I realized, my mom worked on weekends, rarely came to my soccer games really to pay for me to be able to play. And her why inadvertently was supporting me to pursue my passion. And my why became getting as good as I could possibly be so I can earn a college scholarship so she could come to my games. And I think that when I look at what she did for me, so much of that has motivated me in the position I am now. However, I am uniquely in a somewhat different situation because I'm in a great relationship, and the part I missed is I really wish she could have came to my games. And I'm like, how can I create a life where I can support the passions of my kids and also create the opportunity where I can also enjoy in that with them and be present with them? So I think it's iterating on what my mom did. And isn't that what we all want to do, is be better than the generation before, or create a better life for our kids? My mom's like, that's my dream for you, is to be better than I was. And so this is me taking a whack at it and trying to do that, because you're right. It is to, all of this considering is the environment he's growing up in and how we can provide what we believe is the best environment for him.
That's awesome.
I love
I
that.
was going to save that clip for Mother's Day.
Yeah,
That was awesome. A beautiful,
that's
beautiful
great.
statement.
I almost
I know,
cried.
seriously.
No,
Don't cry, Deb.
well, like I was just talking, like literally before I was late, well, logging on when I was running all
I
my
wasn't
errands
going to
and
bring
stuff.
that
I
up,
was
but since you did, she was late, everybody. Just want to bring that up. I was
I
going
was
to let it
late.
slide, but go ahead, Deb.
But I was having lunch with my coworker. It was Kaylin, actually, Josh. And so we were just talking about our students and just some close people, people that we know just that are close to us right now that are struggling. But we were just kind of like, dang, like, people have been, so and so has been through this, and that. Like, maybe that's why they're struggling. And then, but I'm kind of like, but wait a minute, like, I'm not trying to make excuses for, and we all make poor decisions. We've all gone through those hard times and stuff. But I'm also like, that shouldn't be an excuse, because look at everyone has a story, and there's so many hard times that everyone's gone through, but you have a choice to turn it around and to just pick yourself up like your mom did, Lauren, and just go do it, just go get it. And maybe some people don't have a why, like maybe, I don't know, like it's hard, right? And so it's great that you have the mindset of like, wow, like I watched my mom do that, like I'm I'm gonna do that, and I'm gonna try to do this for my son too. It's so, and like a lot of people, just I see it with my students, with how they're struggling sometimes, and I could see that their parents are trying their best and their parents are like, I don't know what to do. So it's amazing that, and some people have the mindset, like you, Lauren, to like, let me try to do this differently. Like I have every excuse in the book to fold and to call it quits and to say screw it, like what's the point? And so, but I think it's important to find the why, and some people just may not find it yet. But I feel really harsh for saying this, but there's no excuse. Like you can pick yourself up and keep going. And so I'm sure there's a better way to say it. You probably have a better way to say that, Lauren, to your clients, but this is why I don't do what you do. But yeah, it's just, I'm sure that people struggle with that, but that's great. I love that you shared that story.
Well, I love what you said, and I think if we just really boil it down, is that when we look at mental performance, what it is it's accepting your reality and choosing your response. You don't have to like your reality, and what I'm not saying is you should settle for what's in front of you. But at some point, you have to accept what's in front of you if you have any desire to move forward. And I think what you're describing is the people that accept what's in front of them and choose to make what's in front of them better. Like, hey, I don't like where I am, or they realize this is the opposite direction of that I wanted to go, and this is not the result I was hoping for. And instead of being discouraged and going, all right, well, that's it, I quit, they go, how will this make me stronger? What now? Now that I'm here, what's my next step? And they begin to use it as a stepping stone versus a setback. So I totally agree, and I think I think the struggle is actually something that should be welcomed, especially at young ages, because it's the really the only place where you can develop resilience. You can't have resilience without struggle. Resilience needs struggle to exist. And so I think that there's a lot of benefit in leaning into those moments and using them as an opportunity to really build that muscle of resilience in your mind.
Love it.
That's good. Like I said, this is why we have her back all the time. She's a pro, and you're getting all this stuff for free. So you're welcome, you guys. I did have,
Great.
so again, two more questions for you. Two more questions and a statement. I'm going to give the statement first. The statement is, and I know I've mentioned this to you before, I don't understand how you're able to record so much content yourself, because we've done that before, Deb, where we do like a promo video, and I'm locked in this office. Like my wife's sliding food under the door, like I'm a prisoner, because I can't leave until I get it right. And you just seem to, I know you probably don't nail it every single time, but like the amount of content you put out there, like I imagine it's impressive. That's all I want to say. It's impressive. And I'm sure that you have it down pretty well by now. And I'm sure you're not taking like 55 takes like I am sometimes. So, good for you. I just wanted to point that out. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Well, I will tell you that I did have a reflective moment the other day because we had 2 shots that really only took 1 or 2 takes,
Ooh.
which is really awesome. Every once in a while I have one of those days, and the guy Mike Sato, who does all my video, he's like, "Oh, is this a one timer?" And I'm like, "Let's see." Now the week before that, it took me like 15 times. So I will tell you that I don't put out the 15 times. I mean, you've seen actually some of my like funny videos that I post with all the behind the scenes.
Those are fun,
but
for sure.
Thank you. It just takes a lot of repetition. So I've put in a lot of work to put out that content, and it is not always easy.
Oh, it's awful. It's my least favorite part, but I feel like we've talked, like we need to do some of the stuff, but it's the worst. And I, for whatever reason, like forget the English language when I turn the camera on to do it. It's like I can't speak anymore, and it's awful. But we've actually, you mentioned Mike. We've actually had him and I have had some back and forth a little bit about trying to be on this podcast. It's just he's so busy, it hasn't really worked out yet.
Oh, he's the best.
He seems like his stuff is dope.
Like,
so
the best in the business, let me tell you.
So one day, Mike, if you're listening, one day we will make it happen. But I also understand you're a very busy man, so it's schedules just haven't lined up yet. But one random question I wanted to ask you. It has nothing to do with what we've been talking about. But obviously, when we first met you, you were working for the New York Yankees, and then since then, and we've talked about it a little bit, you have your own business now, and you're doing all these awesome things, but you're not tied to that brand anymore. Is it weird? Was it weird going from this idea of there's an organization that is pursuing one specific goal, and everybody that's a part of that organization is kind of going towards that? I mean, there's individual goals, but like really the purpose is to win a championship at the end of the day, right? And create a winning culture. Now you're dealing with individuals for different companies that have a bunch of different goals. Obviously, they still want to win in whatever they're doing, but at the end of the day, they're not playing baseball. They're not playing sports all the time. They're doing different things. Like, was that a weird thing going from, hey, the organization moving in one direction, everybody's kind of focused on one thing, to now I'm working with a bunch of people with scattered interests and different visions, although they're seeing you for a reason. But I mean, at the end of the day, they're doing different things. They're in different fields. Like, was that a weird transition?
No. And I'll tell you why. Because I treated the Yankee ecosystem as if it were my business.
Oh.
And so when I was working with them, I was like, let's pretend this was my business. How would I treat it? Like, how would I treat it? Because think about it. At the time, we had 9 teams, and now we don't. They've changed a bunch of things, but at the time we did. And so there's all these different teams, all different levels, all different individuals with different goals, all different staff with different goals, whether it was a family, they have family stuff on the side, their personal stuff. So what I ended up realizing is that we all have these buckets that are somewhat consistent throughout, whether you're a baseball player, a business professional, whether you have your own company, or whether maybe you don't work at all. We have these buckets, and there's a personal bucket, things that are personal to us, something personal we want to improve. There's a physical bucket, like how are you physically pushing or pursuing. There is a emotional bucket, there's an intellectual bucket, and then there's a professional bucket. And when we look at these things across human beings who are wanting to better themselves, all these areas fit in somewhere. And so when I'm looking at whether it's like I said, it's a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, or I'm working with a pitcher or a, head coach of a team, they all have these buckets and different things go into them, but there's a lot of similarities across them. And so I would say that it was tough leaving the Yankees because it felt so familiar and it also felt like family. That was the really tough part. Working with the individuals wasn't so different because I worked with so many individuals. Yes, they were on a team. And yes, the overarching vision was for the major league team to win a World Series. But it's different when you are, in low A. It doesn't mean that you don't contribute somehow to that, but it's different.
Sure.
So to me, I was expecting it to be more different than it was. We'll put it that way. Because what I realize is that people in the business world or any profession really is they are mental athletes.
Sure.
Like they're having to also prepare themselves mentally, talk themselves through things, develop new neural connections the same way an athlete would, especially those that are high performing. And so that it actually surprised me it wasn't more different.
Sure.
I found so much more similarities across the board.
Awesome. Very cool. Love it. Deb, I have one final question, but is there anything you want to mention before I mention this last one?
I just would love to talk to you, Lauren, one day about narcissism for like hours.
Done. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Episode with just you and I about that someday.
I think I might have to ask you the question. Yeah, sorry, you're out.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Things really went sideways. This is not how we started this podcast off.
I need to start my Not Here to Judge podcast again and have you on that one and talk about
there you go.
all those topics. Love it.
Done.
Okay. Well, before I actually get kicked off my own podcast, the last question I want to ask you is, it would be silly for us to have you on here and not have you talk about Elite by Choice. I want to say the last time we had you on, you were either just doing your first event or you just finished your first event. Mm-hmm. And since then, if anybody doesn't follow Lauren, it seems like it's become this whole other thing now. So very cool to watch it from a distance. But can you tell us a little bit about what it is and then how much it's grown and what's coming up for Elite by Choice?
Yeah. So Elite by Choice is an event I host every year. And what we do is for the last, actually, I should say, I think 4 years now, I'm like, shoot, like going back in my brain, 4 years, it was really targeting people in the field of sport and performance psychology. But what we realized is every year we also had a couple business professionals asked to attend, all knowing what the content was, all of this. And by the end of every single event, our business professionals would go, Lauren, this is not just for people in the sports psych world. Like I gained there's so much from this. And I kept getting all of my clients and all my corporate clients to ask, can I come? Is this something I can join? And so this year we've actually broken down all the barriers. And now we have opened it up to professionals, whether you are a CEO, an executive, a head coach, or you are in the field of sport and performance psychology, or you're a leader just really wanting to improve yourself, this event is for you. And so really the biggest things the things that I believe differentiate us is that we are a small group. So while there's a lot of events that host, thousands or hundreds of people, we have a 25 person cap on our events. And so what it does is it creates really good connections. So not just the connections of like, oh, I met Josh and I got Josh's business card. No, you will sit down and go through a workshop with Josh and get to know his family, the things that he cares about, his values. And by the end of it, you're going to likely have Josh's phone number that you can call on if you have a question or anything about podcasting. He'll answer your call. And so we have gotten people countless jobs, connections, contracts simply for attending this event because of the connections that they make. Not only that, then we have our insanely good speaker lineup. And I personally, I mean, call it selfish, but I bring in people I really want to learn from who I think are doing excellent work. And so this year is going to be no different. I have not announced our speaker lineup yet, but oh my gosh, it is incredible. So you're going to get really hands-on experience with these speakers. And the cool thing is the speakers don't just speak and leave. They hang out with you. So again, you attend a keynote, somebody comes in and leaves. You get to actually get to know these people and develop connections with them as well. And there's a long laundry list of other things, but those are the things that I'm really passionate about it. We have 25 spots. We've already sold 11 tickets because we start with our past attendees and our community. And so if this is something that you're interested in, you can go to my website and go to the events tab and sign up for updates, because when those tickets go live, they will first go live to my subscriber list before they go public, if there's any left at that point. So yeah, it's going to be an awesome event. It's going to be November 7th, 8th, and 9th in San Diego, California.
Ooh, very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. Yeah, one of our previous guests, and we got connected because of you. And I heard you on his podcast, Mikhail Alfon, I believe, was a speaker at your last event. So it's cool to see that for sure. He's an awesome guy. It was fun having a conversation with him.
He is the best.
Yeah,
the best.
Really, really talented guy and really good at what he does. So make sure you guys check out the website. And if you guys are interested, please head over there right away. This will drop on April 9th. So who knows how much time you have between now and then, but hurry up. Either way, just hurry up and go to the website. So Lauren, where can they follow you besides the website? Where can they follow you? Social media, all those places.
Yeah, the places you'll probably see me the most and are best to connect with me on is Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And you can find the links to all of those pages through my website. That'll be the easiest because they're all different. Apparently, there's a lot of Lauren Johnsons in this world. So all my handles are different.
There you go. No TikTok, huh?
No, I started one and then was like, this is too much to keep up with. So it was a whole nother list of content I had to create. So I decided if you go, you'll find me on there, but I haven't posted in who knows how long.
TikTok sucks. I'm going to say it. I know it's necessary. I broke down a couple of years ago. We have one. I just post the exact same thing across the board, but I hate it so much. It's really the stuff I see on there I hate the most. And so you can't, it's just, yeah, it's too much for me. I'm too old, I think. This is not for me.
You're too old.
Yeah.
It's fair.
I think so. Yeah. So, okay. Well, make sure what's that, Deb?
Yeah. I was going to say, I have about 100 messages and videos on TikTok that I have not opened from my friends. I'm like, I can't, you guys, this is too much. You're sending me way too many things. I can't keep up. So yeah, I've kind of stayed off TikTok as well.
I'm glad you brought this up. We don't need to bring our personal stuff into this, but you are a pro, Lauren. We've been talking about connections and relationships. Like, how would you feel if you were partnered with someone, say on a podcast, and they only rarely shared your content, and like they have other platforms, but they just choose not to do anything with those things?
Too many.
I can't say I've experienced that, so I'm not sure I can weigh in on this.
You've made better choices than me.
She's trying to stay out. Doesn't want to be in the middle of this.
I'm just saying she was the perfect person to ask because she always gives us honest answers. So I thought, all right, well, I wasn't going to bring that up, but you brought it, up how you don't pay attention anywhere else. But that's fine. It's okay.
Don't worry, my feelings aren't hurt.
Oh, good. I wasn't worried about your feelings. I was hoping to hurt Deb's feelings, but apparently she doesn't care. Look at her. She's smiling this whole time. So that's all right.
Oh my God.
We should have wrapped this up about 5 minutes ago. So there we go. we just left on.
It's just your ego.
There you go. It's my ego.
Josh,
full circle. There we go. I got to work on it. Yeah.
We can talk later, Josh.
That's okay. I think I'm good. I don't want to waste your time. I'm not going to change.
Fair enough.
So anyways, Lauren, in all seriousness, thank you so much. You are one of our favorites. And so we definitely appreciate you taking time from your very busy schedule to hang out and deal with all this nonsense. So very much excited for all the things you have coming down the road, the book, the events, all that stuff. So we plan on staying connected with you until you don't return our call. So thank you so much for hanging out and chatting with us. We appreciate you. Thanks for watching the show. If you enjoyed that episode, make sure you like it, share it, and hit the subscribe button to get a new episode every week. We'll see you next time on the Connectable podcast.